Have you ever visited a place that just I don't know, it just hums,
Mm,
with life and color, but you get this sneaking suspicion that there's a whole other story going on, just beneath the surface. That's kind of the feeling we got when we were diving into some of this material on Oaxaca, and specifically this piece, Se pegó al texto.
yeah, that initial impression of Oaxaca is so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
The vibrant textiles, the smells of amazing food just kind of wafting through the air, the artistic energy you feel everywhere. Like the source points out, it definitely grabs you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the author of Se pegó al texto kind of discovered, you wander through these central plazas. They're beautiful, don't get me wrong, but you can't shake this feeling that what you're seeing is, well, a bit curated. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Like it's been, I don't know, maybe filtered or staged.
Exactly. More tourists than locals, English menus everywhere. It's almost like looking at a really well-composed photograph, but not the whole picture, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that sense of it being filtered
Yeah.
that the source brings up, I think that's what hints at something more authentic, something deeper going on, something that's less about appearance and more about, I don't know, genuine belonging.
And it was that shift in focus that really got us thinking, right?
Yeah.
We were watching these local school children, first at the Ethnobotanical Garden and then again at Santo Domingo.
Hmm.
And they weren't performing for anyone. It was just them being completely immersed in their culture.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what makes the source's main idea so clear, that they're almost like these two Oaxacas existing side by side, the one that's presented to the outside world and then the one that's truly lived by the people who actually call it home.
And so that's exactly what we want to unpack in this deep dive, right? We want to look for those hidden systems, the ways of life that really define Oaxaca, all based on what we found in this piece. Okay, so let's jump in. And what better place to start than with something Oaxaca is famous for?
Guelaguetza. Right. Now, most people, when they hear Guelaguetza, they probably picture that big state-sponsored festival in July with all the amazing dances and the music, the regional clothing, the whole
Well,
spectacle.
totally. It's like the postcard image, right? But then we came across this quote from Cesar, a guy originally from Querétaro who married into a Oaxacan family. And he had this totally different take. He said, the real Guelaguetza isn't danced, it's lived. It's not one day in July, it's every day of our lives.
Wow, that really shifts your perspective.
Right. It makes you think, okay, there's something more to this. And then you look at the word itself, Guelaguetza. It comes from the Zapotec word, guindaleza, which basically means offering or reciprocal exchange. So it's not just a tradition. It's this whole system, of give and take woven into daily life.
And historically, that reciprocity has been vital in a region where resources can be limited. It's like a social safety net built on those strong community bonds.
Yeah, exactly. And the source gives some great examples of this system in action. Like in many communities, there's this expectation that when young men turn 18, they dedicate a whole year to serving their town without pay. It's not a law, it's just what you do. It's expected.
That's such a powerful example of that community ethos.
Yeah.
It's understanding your role and responsibility within the larger social fabric. And it's not just one-sided, right? It's reciprocal. There's that example of how the community might gift land to young couples who can't afford it so they can start their lives together.
It's beautiful. It shows this community actively taking care of its own, recognizing that everyone contributes in different ways throughout their lives. So it's not a one-time charity thing, but this continuous loop of giving and receiving that defines Guelaguetza. But, like the source points out, these deep-rooted systems, they can get disrupted, and that brings us to gentrification.
Right. And what's interesting is that gentrification in Oaxaca, it's often not this blatant destructive force. The source talks about how it comes disguised as these positive changes, like trendy shops popping up, boutique hotels, promises of investment and revitalization.
You see the surface improvements. Streets get paved, you get air-conditioned cafes, these beautiful neighborhoods like City Center, Jalatlaco, Xochimilco, all these places that become hotspots for tourists and, digital nomads.
Yeah, but if we zoom out a bit, we start to see the costs, which are often hidden. Behind the pretty facade, locals are getting priced out, displaced. Land, which was maybe seen as something shared or gifted within the Guelaguetza system, becomes just another commodity.
And the culture itself starts to change, too. It becomes a product, something
Yeah.
to be consumed by tourists, right? It's content instead of something genuinely lived.
Mhm.
And that reciprocal spirit of Guelaguetza, it risks becoming just a transaction.
And this is where the concept of reinforcing feedback loops comes in. The source describes how gentrification can become this self-perpetuating cycle. More tourism creates more demand, which drives up prices, leads to displacement, and changes the culture. And then, ironically, that very change attracts even more tourists seeking that authenticity that's fading away.
It's like a vicious cycle. It's not a sudden death of the culture, but a slow erosion of the very conditions that allow it to thrive.
Exactly. And as the source points out, the danger is not just what's lost, but what replaces it, a system driven by different values. Which leads us to another example of a deep-rooted system in Oaxaca, mezcal.
Mezcal. Now, at first glance, it might seem like just another trendy drink. You see it everywhere in Oaxaca, right? On all
It
menus.
has definitely gained popularity. Mezcal bars are popping up everywhere, but if you dig a little deeper, you see how connected it is to the land, to time, to ritual.
It's amazing to learn about the sheer variety of agave used. There are over 30 different types, and only one, espadín, is really domesticated. The rest are wild, growing slowly in the mountains, sometimes taking 15, 20 years to mature, and they're considered sacred.
And that sacredness extends to the production. Even in larger operations, there are these ritualistic elements. The mezcaleros thanking the earth, asking forgiveness from the agave plant. It emphasizes the relationship, the respect for nature.
And then there's the whole history with tequila. It's fascinating how tequila, which originally was a type of mezcal, was deliberately separated and marketed to distance it from that peasant image of traditional mezcal. It's a perfect example of that shift from guandaleza, that reciprocal offering, to profit.
Exactly. It's how a cultural system can be transformed by market forces. But luckily, not every system changes so easily. And that brings us to El Tule.
Ah, el árbol del Tule. This massive ancient tree, over 2,000 years old. Its trunk is so wide you can't even hug it. And everyone just calls it Tule, even though the botanical name is ahuehuete.
What's so incredible about El Tule is that it has survived for so long. It's not by chance. The source makes it clear it's because of the community's care. They see it as a living ancestor. There are all these traditions around watering it, telling stories about it.
Oh, and the part about the school children. The ones with the highest grades get to be guides and point out the different shapes they see in the bark, the lion, the deer, the heart. It's so beautiful connecting the younger generation to this ancient being. The author mentioned they weren't there during their visit, which actually made the silence around the tree even more sacred.
And that absence highlights the point, right?
Yeah.
The tree's survival isn't just luck. It's a result of this system of care that isn't on any tourist map, but it's alive in the community.
So bringing it all together, it makes you think about that question the author asks. What are the systems we're actually preserving, and what are we just performing?
That's the core question, isn't it? The source describes gentrification as this system intervention. Like it introduces a new element, the power of tourism and the market, which can obscure those deeper systems that are already in place.
But what's hopeful is that even with all the changes in Oaxaca, those slower, deeper systems, the mezcal rituals, the Guelaguetza way of life, the enduring presence of El Tule, they're still alive.
And what's important to remember is that culture isn't sustained just by being visible or being performed. It thrives on feedback, on giving back, on patience that goes beyond the market, on seeking permission, on being part of something much older and deeper.
Which is what drew us to this topic in the first place, right? This sense that there was more to Oaxaca than meets the eye. Now, the source also included these quick insights about gentrification loops, and I think they're worth going over.
Yeah, they're a great way to understand how gentrification unfolds as a system.
Yeah.
It often starts with a place's beauty and its authentic culture, which attracts tourists, artists, investors, all those folks.
But then there's this crucial shift. The system's focus changes from serving the local community to prioritizing outsiders and profits.
And that's when you get that reinforcing loop cooking in. Increased desirability leads to more demand, which drives up prices, leads to displacement, and changes the culture. But that initial charm that attracted people is still there, so it keeps drawing more people in, further fueling the cycle.
And what's often missing is that balancing loop. In a healthy system, you'd have policies or community actions to counteract this unchecked growth, to protect the locals and their culture. But those are often weak or non-existent, and things like Guelaguetza aren't even considered in planning.
And so the source calls unchecked gentrification a system failure because it replaces those living reciprocal systems with extractive ones, where the value flows out of the community instead of circulating within it.
But the point isn't to resist change, right? It's about being aware of which loops are being strengthened and which ones are being neglected.
Exactly. The source ends on this really interesting idea that a city's true nature isn't what you immediately see, but what it allows to keep growing beneath the surface. Those networks, relationships, traditions that sustain it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Oaxaca, we want to leave you with one final thought. Think about your own communities. What are the hidden systems there? What's being performed for show, and what's genuinely being lived and reciprocated? Look beyond the surface and see if you can identify the loops that are being fed and the ones that are being forgotten.
Understanding these dynamics, like we've explored with Oaxaca, could give you a much richer perspective on the world.
So here's to continuing to explore and uncover those systems that breathe wherever they may be. Thanks for joining us.